Hello, welcome to another episode of Live with Marcel and Kilani. And today I have two really important announcements to start with. First one, it's Kilani's birthday today. So we get to celebrate Kilani's birthday and we have a guest. So our guest today is called Khalid, and Khalid is going to tell us all about how you can play to your strengths with regards to running your businesses and building your business, because I think that's a really important conversation. But first, Kilani, congratulations, happy birthday!
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's funny having family in Singapore and then me being over here in Toronto. Kind of feels like it's been my birthday for a day and a half.
Especially with your mom, because your mom's already been celebrating your birthday for a week.
Yeah, a month even.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun celebrating, and it's been a really great day today as well. And this is a great way to finish off my birthday.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Khalid, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Marcel, and very, very big, huge happy birthday to you, Kilani. I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
what the weather's like over in Canada or Toronto, but here in Kuala Lumpur, it's looking like it's going to be a bright and sunny day.
Amazing. It's surprisingly really nice out right now. Usually it's really cold and stormy, but we had a lot of snow the last couple of weeks, and now it's been really sunny. So we're on bluebird days all week.
Fantastic. Have a
Nice.
great day.
Yeah, awesome. So, Khalid, tell us a little bit about kind of your kind of how you ended up in KL, and of course your some of your businesses that you're running.
So I'm originally Indian Sri Lankan. Grew up in New Zealand. I grew up in Auckland. Went to university in Hamilton. If you're familiar with the country, it's a really tiny country in the Pacific. And I've traveled quite a lot. Pretty much been an entrepreneur since I don't know teenage, I suppose. Used to do things like garage sales. I don't know whether you guys have heard about that.
Uh huh.
You open your car boot, or inside your garage, you put a few secondhand things or things that are pre-loved
Yeah.
for the neighborhood to come and sort of exchange or buy, I
You know
suppose.
what
And
my
then
yeah, you know what my entrepreneur teenager years, because I was kind of the same. For me, it was window washing. Yeah,
ah,
same thing. I discovered that you could wash somebody's windows and charge them $10. And I'm like just in that neighborhood alone, there were like hundreds of windows. I could make a ton of money. And, unfortunately, I didn't assess actually how much time and how much energy it actually costs to wash windows. But it was a good idea, right? Yeah. So I hear you. So yeah. So you started off in kind of pre-selling or selling kind of pre-loved things.
yep. And moved on
That's
to university. And university, I had a good mate of mine who was a fixer. He was like, he could actually fix anything and everything, right? So he was one of those, I don't know, MacGyvers. Do you remember MacGyver,
Oh
Marcel?
yeah, I love that
I'm not
show.
sure whether Kalani remembers, but it's MacGyver, and he could fix anything. So we actually we bought things, started with toasters and microwaves, and then ended up selling cars. So that was quite an interesting journey. Spent a lot more time sort of networking, and partaking in various sort of activities, clubs, associations, and mini businesses, right? At the time I
Uh-huh.
was at university, and couldn't hold down to a particular path in terms of a degree. So the reason why I'm saying this is it sort of relates to the topic today, leveraging or playing to your strengths. Because I started off doing a computer science degree, and very soon, very quickly, I found out I'm not one of those guys who can sit in front of a computer and type code. I'd like to go out and have a bit of a chat, network, lots of friends and so on. So sort of every year I was in front of the dean, and he had a list of complaints, and I used to say to him, no, I want to do the courses that I want to do. I mean, I did psychology, linguistics, sorry. So many different kind of courses, management, marketing, and so on. And in the end, I think after the second year, he accepted that, yeah, okay, I'm going to be doing what I want to do. And in the end, when I graduated, he wasn't sure what degree to give me. I completed 3 years. Then he said, "Hey, do you want to? I've looked at all of your things. Majority you've done marketing, pretty much. So do you want to kind of do a postgraduate diploma in that?" So I said, "Well, I love staying at the university, the parties, the friends, all of that, lots of fun." So I did another year at university. Then at the end of that, they came back to me and said, "Hey, we're starting the MBA class. Do you want to give it a shot?" And at that time, I think you've had to have at least 2 years working experience. So I started when I was 14 at KFC as a cook, part time. So sort of carried that along, and I was a shift supervisor by the time I got to university. By the time I was almost sort of about to complete my degree, I was an assistant manager. So they kind of took that experience and gave it to me. So I was one of the youngest MBA students, and I was a pioneer for the university. So that happened. That was a lot of fun. Sort of studying and hanging around with adults. So yeah, I mean that's how it all started, and then ever since I've created, launched, executed a few businesses. So I like to call myself or think of myself as a serial entrepreneur. I've got to be to play to my strengths. I've got to be a serial entrepreneur, or else I wouldn't survive. Because I like to create things. I like to come up with concepts. And I love sort of, I'm really passionate about the concepts I come up with, and I'd love to see them through, sort of bringing my dreams to reality. But of course, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Can I ask a question about that? Like at what point, right? Because I'm sure, like, in your early days, you weren't fully aware of playing to your strengths, right? Or aware of what you didn't know and what you didn't do too well. At what point did you come to that realization? And what was, maybe the catalyst, or maybe the failure, right, that you potentially went through, that triggered that insight for you?
So growing up in a Sri Lankan Indian family in New Zealand, you've either got to be a doctor or an accountant, or else you're kind of a nobody. So I grew up in that sort of environment, and we were kind of. It's quite rigorous. Go to school, do your homework, be the best. You've got to be one first ranked or second in the class. If you got anything less than 95, that's a problem. So
yeah, the Asian F, as we call it, and as my wife likes to call it. She's Chinese, right? And so she's anything less than an A plus is an F.
Right. So yeah, I mean, so that sort of environment, and so we had to do it. And when I went to uni, I mean, I managed to kind of get through, and sort of, I suppose, managed to be in the top 2 in the class. But then when I got to uni, I got a sort of I don't know what they call it. Is it a double promotion or something like that? So from Form 6, instead of doing Form 7, I got straight into uni because of the grades. And so I thought, skipping a year. And I went into uni. First year, I think I ended up, out of 8 subjects, I ended up failing 3. And the others were average grades. But there were some creative subjects where I got sort of A plus. So then I said to myself, the first year I thought, okay, when you try and when sort of, I suppose I call it the universe or nature, it gives it, dishes it out on a silver platter, the black and white, saying, you're really good at this, but you suck at this, but you don't want to accept it because you come from a family where you had to be good at everything, right? You had to be good at sports, debating, elocution classes, studies, all of that, right? So first year, I didn't accept it, and I just sort of the results I thought was reflective of the partying I did. because kind of independence away from home. I think I was about 18 or 17, I think. And so, just being on my own, flatting with some mates, because my parents used to live in Auckland. I went to school in Auckland. Hamilton's about 110K. I think it's about an hour and 20 minutes drive. So I stayed where the university was. And so I said to myself, crap, I've been partying too much. And that's what the folks thought as well. So the second year, I said to myself, okay, just sort of let me let me study a bit. But again, in the second year, similar subjects, I barely passed, right? I put the effort in, so that goes to show that no matter what you do, whether it's your strength or not, if you really put the effort, you might scrape through, right? So that's one of the lessons I've learned. Yeah, that's interesting. Second year, same. I mean, not sort of the results that I had hoped for. But again, I didn't stop networking, partying, and gathering friends, right? So everyone I met became a friend. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know whether that answers your question. So second year that, and then third year, I sort of started kind of swaying towards more sort of community activities, clubs, associations, sports, things like that. And then I said to myself, crap, I need to do the subjects that I enjoy doing, right? So that was the big operative word there, enjoy, right? So I did not enjoy statistics, did not enjoy algebra. Believe me, I can't even believe that I got through it. I got a C, I think, or a C plus in both. But things like psychology, linguistics, marketing, management, leadership, all of that, I found it interesting, and I didn't have to study for them. So I'm not
They
into
just came very naturally. Yeah, they just came
so
naturally to you.
I also figured out I'm not into studying, so I can't sit down and study. So hardly attended any lectures. So generally with these topics, with these subjects, 2 or 3 days before the exams, I just used to go through and have a look at them, and sort of I was okay with it. So I sort of got it. Do you know what I mean? Like I got it. But something like statistics, I had to do a lot of hard work, lots of hard work. It pains to even think about it. So yeah. So I mean, so that's where I kind of thought I did not sort of say play to your strengths kind of thing, but I said to myself, I want to do things that I love doing.
It was more, yeah. It was almost like just energetically, right? It sounds like that that when you were doing something that you really enjoyed, that just created a different energy in you, and you just kind of followed that path of what energizes me versus what drains me.
Absolutely. Anything that I did not enjoy doing, it kind of took the piss out of me. As they say.
Sure. Yeah.
It was
absolutely.
an effort and a half, and just didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that's where it all began. That's where the kind of the realization, but not in so many words. I could articulate it well today, but back then I thought to myself, I'm not cut out to be a corporate guy. Discipline, I could not spell discipline. Even today, I'm not sure whether I could spell discipline. But yeah. And the reason why I enjoy doing different ventures was because I had to have something new all the time. I get bored with things really easily. So yeah, I mean, so this is how I became, I've got a word in front of the entrepreneur, which is serial. Not that I'm Richard Branson, but it's just that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you went from discovering, right, that, hey, if this energizes me, if this gives me positive, kind of positive vibes, and this is something I really enjoy, I'm probably moving in the right direction. What was it about, because now you've been involved now in multiple companies. What was it about them, right, that drove you kind of energetically?
So I've always been curious, right? I think as an entrepreneur or a scientist, I think we're very similar, but extremely different.
Yeah.
I think different skill set, but we're very similar because
Uh-huh.
what drives an entrepreneur is curiosity, right?
Uh-huh.
And to kind of solve an issue or a problem. I think scientists are similar. I notice I've got a few scientists, mates, and when we get
Yeah.
together, we have a
Sure.
chat, and sometimes it's kind of, we just lose ourselves thinking, but Dave, but you're not an entrepreneur. I'm not a scientist, but we're talking we're aligned. Um, sorry, mate, what was your question, Marcel? I just lost myself there.
So yeah, so that's all right. So it's good. It's good to be chatting. But yeah, just kind of like because you've been involved in multiple businesses, and you know that there's this element of energy, right? And so how did that kind of following that energy lead you to these businesses and not maybe, I don't know, F&B or whatever other kind of industries there are? What was it about these ones that really kind of drove you energetically?
So I've got currently live. I'm probably in about four different industries. We've got amongst myself and my three partners, we've got about 20 odd businesses live right now, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's not necessarily about the business. So just to go back again at the university
Yeah,
level,
for sure.
because again, growing up in a quite a strict household, it was difficult to, I suppose, it was difficult to shine based on strength.
Uh-huh.
You could shine based on hard work and the fear of disappointing your parents, but
Uh,
you couldn't play to your strength, right?
sounds like the
So
average
at
workplace
university,
today.
sorry, mate.
Yeah. Sounds like the average workplace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Actually, spot on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A great analogy. I mean, at university, friendship and hanging out and talking to people, meeting people from different cultures. I really enjoyed it, and somehow I could, I suppose, I could get into their skin in a good way, right? So they responded to me. I was like, I was the president of the international what was it, International Club, Students Club of the university a couple of years in a row. I could lobby naturally. I could lobby people. I could convince people. So that sort of stuff. So sort of in retrospect, going back, I'm thinking now that's where my skills to develop a network. An active network, right? Having
Uh,
20,000 followers on Facebook or LinkedIn,
yeah.
it's not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got 5,000 and you could call upon anyone, say for example, I went from a traditional business into e-commerce, right? So straight away looking up my network from LinkedIn to say, who are the guys who are into e-commerce and calling upon them, and them responding and us sort of coming together. That is what I call an active network. So,
Yeah.
it all starts with an active network. Even to youngsters these days, I say to them that the most important asset you could ever acquire and grow is a network, right? That's,
Yeah.
like, for example, networks like BNI and stuff are fantastic, right? For
Yeah.
several reasons. Again, when you talk about playing to your strength, your weaknesses are covered because you've got different kinds of people in these networks,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So my business is the first core is network in my life. My core is
Mm.
developing a network, a strong network, regional, global network across many industries, right, and across many personalities. I don't actually. My network is not just Web3 people or e-commerce people or
Yeah.
kitchenware people, but they're from all walks of life, right? So I've even got a leadership coach in you, Marcel, and a
Yeah.
life coach in Kilani. So you're part of my network. So the next step was I like to look at, again, I like people, right? So that's what the network's about. So when I look at people, I hear what their pain points are generally, like what are they all
Yeah.
talking about. Just to give you an example, during COVID, um, I was reading news, I was into social media, and locked up in the house, and I noticed that people were becoming home cooks, right? To be honest with you, I've never been into the kitchen before COVID, but during COVID, I became a home cook, and now home cooking is my golf, right?
Yeah.
I relax. I love to cook, right? So then I looked at the market. This is in Malaysia. There were very expensive cookware in places like Isetan, expensive brands. Cost you $1,000 in ringgit. It's about $250 US. And then all the way up to Lazada, Shopee, you can find something that's it's cheap as chips, as they say, and I can crush it with one hand. It's so bad, right? So then I said to myself, look, I think people are sort of wanting something that's professional at an affordable cost because it's COVID as well, and they're enjoying cooking. And I didn't find a place in Malaysia where you could find this kitchenware.
Yeah.
So fortunately, I had a kitchenware trading business. So we had a shitload of stocks in the warehouse as well. So I put everything together and I started my first e-commerce business, right, called mycookingstory.com. And it was more lifestyle. So I went out there and did a little live actually cooking and making a mess. And so the home cooks identified with me, and soon we became the number one. We are currently the number one online kitchenware shop in Malaysia, right?
Wow. Congratulations.
So looking at the network, looking at their pain point, and then finding a solution. It could be anything, actually. I mean, believe it or not, mate. Before COVID, on Facebook, I had 5 friends. On Instagram, I had 1 person. This was my oldest daughter. She lives in Singapore as well, Yasmin. So just to kind of see what she's been, what she's doing. She lives a colorful life. So wanted to follow her. So I had no clue what social media was, right? But now, through the COVID, through building that e-commerce business, I suppose I know what it's all about. But that was it, right? So I had no clue about e-commerce. I did 60 hours of steep learning, thanks to Google and mates around me. But I managed to set up a solution, right? So for me, the primary focus is the network, their pain point, and how I can add value by creating a solution. And the solution could be anything. I mean, right now, into Web3, had no clue. If you spoke to me up until August 2021, if you said Web3 again, I would say, sorry, how would I spell that? What do you mean? Is there a Web5? Is there a Web0? Or blockchain? How do I spell blockchain? But now, if you ask me, you Google up and sort of I come across, synonymous with blockchain in Malaysia or metaverse in Malaysia. So this is how the train of thought goes. And there's one other thing, if sort of entrepreneurs are watching or, listening, or youngsters watching and listening, wanting to be an entrepreneur, it's always good to, leverage. I love the word leverage because life is about leveraging. You can actually create maximum value in life by leveraging, right? Either leveraging strengths, leveraging your weaknesses. Your weaknesses are great because they are the magnets to attracting fantastic people into your life where, that's their strength. So I would say that go with what you have, right? In terms of being a serial entrepreneur, I had a kitchenware business and I did not go too far from it by creating an e-commerce, but with kitchenware. So I'm solving my issue in my business, creating a new business. I'm also solving, some of the people's business problems. So pretty much that's how sort of the thought process comes through, and leveraging the strength comes through in businesses.
And so it sounds to me, right, like what popped in my head here was, that you have this ability, right, this strength of connecting with other human beings, right? You connect with them in a very special way, not necessarily with an intention to leverage on them, right? So it's not a transaction, but you just love connecting with people. And while you're doing that, which gives you a lot of energy, you're also really observant, right? Like you said, you're curious, you're observant, and through those observations, you see opportunities, right? And so if you were one of those people who, focused on their weaknesses rather than on their strengths, you would in all likelihood probably have one business rather than 23, right? And you'd still be trying to figure out the nitty gritty of, like, how do I build this and do that, and and things that you're not good at. But while you're doing all of that kind of nitty gritty and focusing on things that you're not good at, you're wasting the opportunity to see opportunity, right? Which is your strength, and so in a way, by staying true to what you do really well, which is being a people connector, right? A genuine people connector who really values that while being very curious about business and opportunities and all of that kind of stuff. And then just, when you see that opportunity, you're able to then pull those people in that are in your network to then kind of say, hey guys, let's create something out of this, and then let each of those persons just kind of do what they love to do with that, and then create something really powerful.
So I mean, you've
That's your story.
yeah. So you've articulated this so well, Marcel. So I could have never said it this well. So well done. So
Yeah.
generally, mate, it's before, probably, in my sort of maybe late 20s, early 30s. If I'm networking and connecting, I always believe that either they should add personal value to my personal life or professional
Yeah.
life. But as I grew more wiser, I suppose, I realized that that's probably the wrong mindset. So when I look at someone now, say for example, if I meet Kilani, I would want to connect with her because I want to sort of I'm curious about her superpower. I call strengths superpower
Yeah,
because it's a very
absolutely.
powerful word.
Yeah.
We come from the world of Tony Robbins, so words are so powerful. So I always say to kids, youngsters, I say, think of strengths as superpowers, right? So when you say, oh yeah, what are your strengths? People go, whatever.
Yeah.
But can you imagine saying to someone, what's your superpower? First, they're going to think you're crazy. Second, they're going to go, well, really, seriously, I've got superpowers? Yes. I think every single individual is a Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, or whatever the superheroes, right?
Yeah.
So, what's your superpower, and how can I add value to your life?
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
got Kilani, and maybe I look at my network and how can I add value, right? Funnily enough, if you've got the mentality of going a bit philosophical here, if you've got the mentality of service rather than sales, and adding value to people, I think the monetization comes automatically, right? So I always say to, again, kids these days, I say to them, don't think about selling something to someone. Think about how you can add value to them, how you can empathize with their problem. Can you deliver a solution? And that's adding value, right? That's serving
Yeah.
people. And when
Yeah.
you do that, you're going to get more customers. You're going to get more stickability between you, more loyalty between you and the person that you're dealing with, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
these are kind of some of the thoughts to throw into the basket of a very well articulated comment you made. I hope it makes sense. But so
Absolutely.
something to note, something to remember. I truly believe using the word strength is quite weak.
Yeah.
The word strength is weak. I think the word that's more powerful these days, with all the Marvel movies and the DC comic movies, it's superpower, right?
Yes.
You in your own right, you're an Iron Man or a Wonder Woman, right? But you just need to find your superpower.
I love that. I think that you're absolutely right with that. And you know what's funny is I actually use that on occasion with coaching as well. Is I have clients, for example, who actually totally underestimate what they're really good at. And I think one of the reasons is, and thank you for highlighting that too, is when we grow up, right, and we live in our own kind of minds and our own bodies, we're not aware of what we're actually really good at because it's something we live with. And so we think, well, just because I have it, everybody else probably has it too. All right. And so we very often underestimate the superpowers that we really have. And I can give you a really good example is very often with leaders that I coach, being, for example, a people leader, is potentially a superpower. And but because these people grow up being people leaders, they don't know that what they have is they think is normal, right? And so hearing in a conversation to say, hey, are you aware that what you're doing is a superpower? They all kind of like, no, I had no idea that was a superpower. So, well, and especially where I see amazing leaders compared to leaders who potentially struggle, right? Are those leaders who are both task leaders and people leaders at the same time, right? Who can do both at the same time, not just one or the other. And and the percentage of those leaders is actually really small, of the people that usually they're either one or the other, and they have to kind of learn how to do the other one a little bit, right? And but it's those people that do both. That's a tremendous superpower, but they're not aware of it. And so they're like, oh, what am I going to do in my career? Where am I going to go? And it's like, it's like, I don't know what my next promotion to be. And say, are you aware that you can do both of these things at the same time? Like, companies will pay tremendous amounts of money for people who can do both at the same time. And they're like, really? Like, I never thought of that, right? And because it's not advertised either, right? People, companies, customers, they're not out there going, I'm looking for somebody with that superpower, because they don't know. They just know that they have a problem that needs to be solved, like you mentioned earlier, and they don't know how they want it to be solved. It just needs to be solved. And if you know your superpower, as simple as that superpower might be, you always have something for somebody out there, right? There's always somebody out there who has a problem that needs solving, and your superpower could be the answer to that. And so it's not just a matter of in that sense of kind of playing to your superpower, in this case your strength, but it's actually being aware that you have them. And I think this is where so many people struggle today. And the reason is because in corporations, right? And I wanted to highlight this earlier, is like performance review time, right? We've just gone through kind of like the first quarter of the year, which is always in companies is performance reviews. And in performance reviews, it's always the case. It's, what do you need to improve on? Very rarely in a performance review, right? It's like, hey, you're really amazing at this. That's a superpower, right? What can we do to nurture that? What can we do to make that even stronger? Never happens.
Yeah, you're
right. It's always like, no, it's like, you don't do that well enough, and you're not doing this, and you need to improve on that, because otherwise, because your rating, right? Because you have to be rated out of, 1 out of 5, has to be at least a 4 or 5 for you to get promoted. And just like going to school, right? That rating includes algebra, chemistry, psychology, arts. It's all of these different areas where, of course, it's for many people, it's virtually impossible to score, a very high mark on all of those fronts. Right. And so maybe that's one of the reasons too, why so many professionals feel unfulfilled in their careers, because they don't get to kind of live their superpower. They're just constantly reminded of, the superpowers.
Hard work thing. Yeah. Tough life.
Yeah. And so, yeah, absolutely. And so what you're doing in your own kind of way, in your own kind of work, is saying, hey, I've identified in myself that these are my superpowers, and I'm gonna build my life around what I do really well, which of course takes a tremendous amount of courage. But when you do that, you also get to live a life that's much more fulfilling and much more enjoyable and all of those kind of things. And I love how you're saying is that each of our superpowers fulfills a need in somebody else. Right? You know,
Yep,
and I love that what you're
absolutely.
saying because I believe that as human beings, we can add value and many times monetizable value, right, to every other human being on this planet. And with, you know, almost 8 billion people on this planet, that's you know, there's a lot to be done out there, right? So if you're sitting, you know, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, what am I going to do with my life, and I don't have anything to offer, and all of a sudden, think about that. You have a superpower, and every other human being, right, is has a need or has a problem or has something to solve, and in all likelihood, your superpower
Yep.
solve that problem. You just need to know, number one, what is my superpower? Number
Sure.
two, you need to know what their problem is. What is it that they need in life? And the moment you can figure that out, you've already got a winning concept.
Yep. And you know, you're spot on, Marcel, because the system has been failing us all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, this is not an excuse, but
Yeah.
you know, to be fair to people, you know, the reason why they haven't identified their superpower, and as you say, I like the word courage to actually, once you identify your superpower, you're in your mid 30s, you know, early 40s, and you're going, shit, you know, I can't because I'm an accountant. I can't become a sales guy or an entrepreneur because this is my career,
Yeah.
right? I've got a family to support, a mortgage to pay. You know, there's no chance. And what are my friends going to think? But I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's my boss going to think? So I think it all starts with the education system. It's very,
Yeah.
very, very unfortunate.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things that I dislike about how I grew up and even the current education system. One is the lack of financial education and financial literacy, because I believe that whether no matter who you are, Superman or Batman or Iron Man, you better know you've got to
Your
have
finances, yeah.
somewhat of a financial literacy. And the second thing is, you know, playing to your strength, leveraging your strength, identifying your strength or superpower. It's not there, right? So, for example, as you said, you've got 8 subjects in a school. You've got to do all of them. You've got to do well at all of them. There are kids. I mean, it'll be interesting because I've never looked at research or whatever, and I'm not an educator as such. But if you look at a classroom, I think there'll be, in the normal curve, in the majority percentile, there'll be a lot of kids that are like, they've got like B's in 4 subjects and, you know, almost D's in the other 4 subjects, right? But they're always ignored as, you know, kind of stupid kids, or
They're like
not
average.
do anything. And then, you know, that goes on, right? Because kids, when they know, I mean, some kids try harder, the parents push harder and things like that. But generally, if I will tend to believe what the system is saying to me, the teachers that
Of course.
I really look up to.
It's your environment, yeah.
But I'm not smart. I'm not smart, so I can't be an entrepreneur. I can't be a CEO.
That's right.
I can't be a CTO. I can't be a CFO because I didn't do well in school. So whenever someone says to me, you know, my kids' friends that come over, you know, the first thing is after exam, it's like, so how'd you go? Not so well. What do you mean? I didn't get good grades. So, you know, again, grades, like if I got good grades in science or arts, then sort of the other part makes me stupid or makes me not so smart, makes me, you know, sort of the system says that you're not going to be successful. So when you,
I think
grow up,
I think even stronger is that, you know, the system is there to remind us, right, of what we can't do.
Or what we shouldn't do even.
Yep.
Sorry?
That's right.
What was that?
Or what we shouldn't do even.
Yeah, exactly. Or what we can't do, right? You know, is oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. You know what's really fun? Of course, this is many years ago. You know, I'm aging myself now. I can tell you a funny story. Is when I was a teenager in high school. You know, I had a, you know, you get to visit. You know, when you become a senior, right? You get to visit like the counselor, and they're like, what do you want to do with your life, right? That kind of question, right? And I was like, I'd love to be a musician. and he looked at me and kind of laughed and said, no, a real job, right? And that was,
There goes your superpower. It was blown away.
Creativity is my superpower.
Yeah,
that's right. So my two superpowers are number one is my creativity. I've learned over my life, and hence the reason why I've written 2 books and all of that kind. I think up concepts and all of that kind of stuff very well. But my other superpower is connecting with human beings, right, at a human level. And those are 2 very important superpowers that I've kind of learned to leverage on over the years. But there was nobody in school that pointed that out to me and say, that's what you're really good at, that's what you need to be chasing. And my creative side, wanted to make music, and I was quite passionate about making music, but there was not a soul out there that said, that's what you need to be pursuing, because that needs to be your career. And instead it was like, no, that's not realistic enough. You need to fit in a box. Right. And I've never been a box person. So, that was always my challenge, because I grew up, coming from school believing that I wasn't smart either. I believed that I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor or to be a, psychologist, or, whatever it is that, I kind of thought, hey, maybe I want to pursue that. And I always kind of got that, no. That's not for you, right? And it is quite interesting. And it's not just the educational system; it's society in general, right? Because I think it's become so systemic, and especially with social media. I think one of the powers of social media is that as much as we would like to think that it's all there's a lot of empowerment and stuff in there. Generally speaking, it's social media is there to remind us how unsuccessful and how small we really are, because the messaging that is bombarded on us is the opposite, right? It's like, look at me, I'm so successful, and and I'm fit and I'm healthy and whatever it is, and it's all to the extremes. And if you're not extremely wealthy, or you're not extremely fit, or you're not extremely whatever, you're not worth talking about. Right. And that's the same thing. Is like nobody comes on, onto Facebook, says, hey guys, look, I'm average. Woo! Right. It's like, and then the rest of the world celebrating for that person, like, dude, that's awesome. No, it's like, if you're not in the extreme, nobody really wants to see it. Right. And so we've created a society, we've created a system where the only person that can break free from that is ourselves, right? Because there's nobody else out there that's going to do that for us, right? Absolutely.
One point to that social media example. I think it's really great that you brought that up. I was challenged yesterday to take 36 hours off of social media. I'm on hour 25 now. Without using social media. So I'm going until tomorrow morning at like 7 a.m. ish. And I've always been very intentional about social media. Years ago, I decided to unfollow any accounts that kind of made me feel not so good about myself, and choose to only follow people who inspire me. But yet, even then, whenever I'm consuming social media, there's a lot of thoughts of, oh, I should be this, I should be doing something different, I need to be a different way or show up a different way. And even in the last 24 hours, I just came to this realization that there is no specific way that I need to be, right? And I've started to just come to understand all of these strengths that I have and all of the things that I am good at. And I'm like, maybe I should lean into those rather than trying to, take on what everyone else is, because they're in their strengths. And I think that when you're able to live in your strengths, you can appreciate other people's strengths so much more.
Spot on. Yeah, spot on.
Khalid, I have to say, from now on, this is my pledge. What I learned from this session is that from now on, I'm going to stop using the word strength.
Superpower only.
It's superpower only.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention, because it is absolutely true. The word strength doesn't mean anything, but we are all blessed with some form of superpower.
Yep.
And if we get to know that from each other, my God, like the whole world will open up. So thank you for that. That was a very valuable moment for me today.
Absolutely welcome. And just hey, just
Yeah.
for the audience, in case they're wondering, how do you identify superpower? It might be sort of it's a basic thing maybe for us, but if people are sitting out there and saying, okay, well, I studied to be an accountant or a lawyer, but what's my superpower? Because I'm not, I think my superpower is different. The fact that you're thinking your superpower is different already means that you're in search. That's a good thing. But generally, I think you can identify your superpower quite easily because it's all about what you were leaning towards as you were growing up. What was your thing? What made you happy? What made you kind of like wake up in the morning and go, "Yay, I'm gonna go do this." So that sort of feeling is what sort of so what creates that feeling, that's what your strength is or your superpower is, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the easiest way to, you can dive in and have another 2 hour session on this, but
Absolutely.
simply
Yeah.
put, that's what it is. That's the story. And again, leveraging the superpower you've got. I think it's to identify your superpower, you must. I mean, I suppose the purpose in life for me is identifying the superpower that's being given to me, that's innate to me, something where I did not learn to be, this person or learn to have this superpower, but something that's innate, and using the superpower to, alleviate others or a community in our lives. I think that's probably, that's my mission. I believe that's the kind of mission that life is all about. So
Yeah.
identify your superpower. I think you must, and then use it to help people and help
Yeah.
other people identify their superpowers, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you don't really know what your superpower is, but you ask your missus or you ask your best mate and say, hey, what do you when you think of me, what do you think? I mean, what am I good
What
at, right?
superpower do you see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What an amazing question we can ask people, right?
Yeah,
Like
around
with
you.
regards to trying to identify themselves, and again leveraging off your network, right? Is leveraging on the quality relationships that you have with people. Those people are able to see your superpower even when you don't,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
and that's honestly what you just mentioned is the definition of coaching, right? We do that in coaching. We help people see their superpowers, and unfortunately, of course, is people have to pay for that, but it's not necessary, right? If you have a quality network, if you have quality relationships with people, you can have people pointing out to you. You can ask them, say, "Hey, what do you think my superpower is?" And they're going to be very honest with you, in terms of what they see. And if we can do that with each other, I mean, imagine, what we could accomplish.
Just to scale the conversation a bit higher, take it a bit
Yeah.
higher from self to organizations. I
Yeah.
believe, generally when someone says, Khalid, so what's the USP, unique selling proposition, of your
Yeah.
business in the Web3 world, right? That in itself, right? So every company has its own superpower.
Yeah.
If you don't identify the superpower of your company as a leader or entrepreneur or CEO, then I think you're screwed.
Yeah.
You're going to be
Yeah.
competing. You're going to be competing. I'm a big believer in abundance, which is directly opposite to competition. I don't
Yeah.
believe in competition.
Same.
It's ridiculous because
Yeah.
there's plenty of everything in this world, and
Yeah.
if everyone can play to their superpower, you will never be competing. You wouldn't even know what that word means, right?
Exactly.
Start from the school, at school.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to be number one, right? But
That's
number
right.
one in what? I mean, number
Yeah.
one in your superpower. Hone in your superpower, develop your superpower. And again, I mean, there is a lot to be learned from these superheroes, right? If you remember every superhero, when he or she identifies their power, they're always confused and they can't control it, and it's all over the place. And thinking of Spider-Man, right? It's all that jello coming
having
out,
to learn, and having to
making a
learn
mess.
how to work with it.
Yes, how to harness your superpower is another whole thing, and that's what life should always be about: honing in your superpower and harnessing your superpower, then using your superpower to help others. I mean, it's all in the comics, it's all in the superhero movies. You can learn so much from there.
That was Stan Lee's superpower.
Sorry, man?
Right? That was Stan Lee's superpower.
Yep.
Stan Lee was the inventor, of course.
DC Comics.
Marvel, right? Marvel, right? Was Stan Lee. And
Marvel or DC Comics?
It's a Marvel. Yeah, he was Marvel. Yeah, and but that was his superpower, right? Because the Spider-Man, all of these characters, they kind of go. It's kind of the same story, right? And his superpower was to be able to tell a story that we all have a superpower, but tell it in an entertaining way that makes us want to watch, that person's life, and he was brilliant at it. Yeah. And so that's exactly the story. And so he identified early with his superpower was the ability to tell stories about coming of age, basically, right? And coming into our own as ourselves and accepting that. And he just did that in a very, very creative way. So yeah, absolutely. Well, you know what? I think we're getting to the end of our show. It sounds to me like we can keep going on for hours. So I'd love to and invite you to come on again, some other day, and in a different topic. Love having you on the show. That was so much fun. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for me. How about you, Kilani? You got any final thoughts?
That's all for me as well. I really like the idea of playing to your superpower rather than your strength. I think it's also in a way a lot easier to identify your superpower, to say, okay, what's my one thing that I'm really, really good at, and to lean into that. So that's my takeaway and something I'm going to practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. Khalid, any final thoughts before we go?
So I'm just going to leave you guys and the audience with an analogy that's always stuck to my mind. It's very, very clear why we need to, harness our superpowers. If you expect, success, if you define success as a fish being able to climb a tree, I mean, hey, so that's all I've got to say. I mean, I think that explains everything, because our school systems, our community is based on, hey, fish, sorry, there's a tree, climb it, because that monkey can do it. Why can't you do it?
That's right.
So that's it. That's it from me, guys. And hey,
wonderful.
Listen, it's a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Really, really enjoyed talking to you guys.
Absolutely, same. It was such a fun conversation, and so hopefully we'll get to bring you on the show again, and maybe we can dive in even a little bit more into the superpowers and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you for joining us today, Khalid. Thank you, Kilani, and of course thank you, audience, for watching the show. Remember, this show, even though it's live right now, it's going to be floating around for a while on social media, but it's also available on YouTube, so you can always watch it back on YouTube. Whenever you feel like it, will link back to it. So these superpowers are now permanent on the server, which is always really great. So thank you all, everybody, and see you in our next episode. Bye.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.